They say hitting rock bottom is just a metaphor. People use it when they have a bad week at work or when a relationship ends. They don't know what real rock bottom is. For me, rock bottom was a literal freezing park bench in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon holding a single muddy stuffed bear that used to belong to my 4-year-old son. Exactly 32 days ago, I had it all. My name is Anna. I was the director of marketing at a top-tier firm. I lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom suburban house. I had 2 incredible, beautiful children. And I was married to David, a man I had loved for 8 years. Today I am homeless, I am unemployed, and I have a court-mandated restraining order that legally prohibits me from coming within 500 feet of my own children. And all of this, every single ounce of this absolute destruction, was orchestrated by one person, my maid of honor, the godmother to my kids, my absolute best friend in the entire world, Elena. Elena was always the unlucky one. She was the friend who always picked the wrong guys, the one who couldn't hold down a stable job, the one who was always crying on my couch at 2 a.m. I gave her money. I gave her a key to my house. I treated her like a sister. I didn't realize that while I was wiping her tears, she was taking notes on exactly how to replace me. The nightmare started 3 weeks ago. I came home early from a business trip. I didn't find them in bed together. No, Elena was too smart for that. I found them in the kitchen. She was cooking my kids their favorite meal, wearing my apron, laughing with my husband in a way that made my blood run completely cold. When I confronted them, Elena didn't panic. She just looked at me with this terrible, calm pity and said, "Anna, you're having another episode. We talked about this." I didn't know what she meant, but David looked at me like I was a monster. The next 48 hours were a blur of absolute terror. I went to work the next day, only to be called into HR. There were photos, printed, clear photos of me supposedly engaging in corporate espionage, sending client lists to our biggest competitor. The emails came from my IP address. I was fired on the spot, stripped of my severance, and threatened with legal action. When I stumbled home, completely broken, the locks were already changed. David had filed for emergency custody. In court, he and Elena presented a mountain of evidence. Fabricated diary entries showing I was suicidal, fake receipts for massive amounts of alcohol, and an entire narrative that I was a danger to my own family. Elena testified against me, crying fake tears, saying she had been trying to protect the children from my insanity for months. I lost everything. The judge didn't even want to look at me. I was thrown out into the street with a single suitcase. So here I was, sitting on a park bench, completely destroyed. I honestly thought about just walking into the river and letting it all end. They had won. She had stolen my entire life, perfectly, without leaving a single trace. I reached into the pocket of the old winter coat I was wearing. It was a coat I had lent to Elena last winter, and she had returned it a few months ago. My fingers brushed against something hard and plastic in the lining. There was a small hole in the pocket. I pulled it out. It was a small pink USB flash drive. Elena's flash drive. I went to the public library, logged onto a free computer, and plugged it in. I thought maybe I'd find some family photos, maybe a backup of her resume. What I found instead made my heart completely stop. It wasn't just proof of her affair. It was a massive gigabyte-heavy folder titled Project A. I opened it, and as I started reading, the crippling depression I had felt for the last month completely vanished. It was replaced by something else, something cold, dark, and incredibly dangerous. Elena hadn't just gotten lucky. She had built a psychotic, step-by-step blueprint to destroy me. And she had made one fatal mistake. She left the blueprints in my pocket. I sat in that hard plastic chair at the public library, the cheap fluorescent lights buzzing above me, and watched my own digital murder unfold on a scratched computer screen. The folder Project A wasn't just a collection of files. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Elena hadn't just stolen my husband in a moment of weakness. She had been studying me and him for almost 2 years. I clicked on an Excel spreadsheet titled David's Triggers. It made me physically sick to my stomach. It was a perfectly categorized list of every single argument David and I had ever had, which Elena had eagerly listened to while pretending to be my supportive best friend. Under dislikes, she had written, "Anna works too late. Anna is too strict with the kids' screen time. Anna hates his mother's cooking." And right next to it, under a column titled My Solution, she had written, "Always be available. Let the kids play video games when I babysit. Ask his mother for her lasagna recipe and make it for him." She had treated my husband like a rescue dog that needed retraining. She didn't love him. She just wanted what I had. And she manipulated him into thinking she was his perfect low-maintenance fantasy. But the spreadsheet wasn't the worst part. I opened a subfolder labeled Corporate Exit. Inside were the exact drafts of the fake emails that had gotten me fired. The client lists, the messages to our competitors, all of it. But there was a problem. To send those emails from my secure company IP address, she would have needed administrative access. Access a maid of honor definitely doesn't have. I kept digging. And then I found the smoking gun, a hidden folder containing dozens of screenshots of text messages. They were between Elena and Richard. Richard was my boss, the married, heavily respected vice president of marketing who had looked me in the eye and fired me with zero hesitation. The texts were vile. They detailed a twisted 6-month-long affair between Elena and Richard. In exchange for Elena's company at cheap motels on Tuesday afternoons, Richard had provided her with my IP login credentials. They had planned my termination together. Richard wanted to promote his own nephew into my high-paying position, and Elena needed me unemployed, stressed, and vulnerable so she could swoop in and play the hero for David. It was a perfectly executed conspiracy. I stared at the screen. A normal person would have grabbed that flash drive, run straight to the police station, and screamed for justice. But the legal system had already failed me. My credibility was completely destroyed. On paper, I was a fired, unstable, bitter ex-wife. If I showed up with a random USB drive, David's expensive lawyers would just claim I forged it all myself in a desperate attempt to get my kids back. A USB drive wasn't enough. I needed live ammunition. I needed to catch them in the act. I needed confessions. I closed the folder, safely ejected the pink drive, and slipped it into my shoe. When I walked out of that library, Anna the victim was dead. If you want to hunt a monster, you have to become a ghost. I took the last $200 I had to my name. I went to a cheap pharmacy and bought black hair dye, a pair of thick, non-prescription glasses, and a cheap burner smartphone. In a dirty gas station bathroom, I washed the blonde out of my hair, cut it short to my shoulders, and put on the glasses. I looked completely different. I looked invisible. I couldn't get a real job with my ruined background check, but I didn't need one. I needed access. I went to a wealthy neighborhood adjacent to my old one and started putting up flyers offering dog walking and house cleaning services for cash. It took 3 days to get my first client. By the end of the week, I had a steady cash flow. But more importantly, I had a reason to be walking around my old neighborhood, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, blending into the background. I started tracking their routines. I knew what time David left for work. I knew what time Elena took my kids to school. And I knew exactly how long the house, my house, was empty every single morning. It was time to pay my best friend a visit. Breaking into your own home is an incredibly surreal experience. It feels like you're a ghost haunting a life that used to belong to you. I knew David's schedule perfectly. Every Tuesday at 8:15 a.m., he drove the kids to school before heading to his law firm. And Elena had a standing appointment at a luxury salon downtown at 9 a.m. That gave me exactly a 45-minute window where the house was completely empty. I parked 2 blocks away and walked through the back alleys, keeping my head down, a black baseball cap pulled low over my dyed hair. I reached the back fence of my property. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. David is a creature of habit. He's also incredibly lazy when it comes to home security. I knew, with absolute certainty, that he hadn't bothered to change the digital keypad code on the side garage door. He used his father's birth year. He always did. I punched in the 4 digits. A tiny green light flashed. The lock clicked. I slipped inside. The air in the house hit me like a physical punch. It smelled like my laundry detergent, mixed with the expensive, overpowering vanilla perfume Elena always wore. I walked into the kitchen. There was a coffee mug in the sink with her red lipstick on the rim. My kids' drawings were still on the fridge, but my photos had been meticulously replaced with photos of her and David, smiling perfectly. I didn't have time to cry. I had a mission. With the cash I had saved from walking dogs, I had purchased 3 motion-activated, Wi-Fi-enabled micro cameras. They were the size of a dice. I worked fast. I planted the first one inside a fake potted plant in the living room, angled perfectly to capture the couch and the front door. I planted the second one on top of the kitchen cabinets, looking down at the island. And the third one went straight into David's home office, hidden behind a stack of thick legal books on his top shelf. I was in and out in less than 12 minutes. I locked the door behind me and vanished back into the alleyway just as Elena's white SUV pulled into the driveway. That night, sitting in a cheap, rented motel room that smelled like old smoke, I opened the camera app on my burner phone. The live feed was working perfectly. But it was the recorded motion-triggered clips from that afternoon that gave me exactly what I needed, the live ammunition. I clicked on a video from 3:30 p.m. The kids had just gotten home from school. David was still at work. The footage showed Elena opening the front door. She looked exhausted, carrying shopping bags. My 4-year-old son ran up to her, holding a picture he had drawn, pulling on her expensive coat. "Look, Elena, I made a spaceship!" he yelled happily. The sweet maternal mask Elena wore for David and the judge instantly evaporated. Her face twisted into a look of absolute disgust. She practically shoved my son away. "Don't touch my coat with your sticky hands, Leo," she snapped, her voice harsh and cold. "Go to your room and turn on your tablet. I have a massive headache and I don't want to hear a single sound from either of you until your father gets home. Now." My blood boiled watching my son's face fall as he quietly walked upstairs. But the video wasn't over. Elena walked into the kitchen, dropping her bags. It was 3:45 in the afternoon. She opened the fridge, poured herself a massive glass of white wine, and pulled out her phone. The camera on the kitchen cabinet captured the audio perfectly. "Richard," she sighed into the phone, taking a huge gulp of wine. "It's me. Yeah, the transfer cleared. No, David doesn't suspect a thing. He's so incredibly clueless. It's actually pathetic. He thinks I'm Mother of the Year." She laughed, a high, cruel, terrible laugh. "Listen," she continued, her voice dropping lower. "Are we still good for the promotion bonus? Because playing stepmom to Anna's annoying brats is exhausting. I earned that payout." I paused the video. I had her. I had her abusing my children emotionally. I had her admitting to the financial setup with my former boss. I had her calling her new, perfect husband pathetic. The legal system had demanded proof. And now, I had high-definition video and crystal-clear audio. I didn't just have enough to get my kids back. I had enough to absolutely, entirely destroy her. It was time to start the psychological warfare. Having undeniable proof of someone's guilt is a powerful thing, but dropping it all at once is a rookie mistake. If I just handed David the flash drive and the videos, he would be shocked, sure. But Elena was a master manipulator. She would cry, she would beg, she would spin some elaborate lie about being blackmailed or coerced. No, I needed David to see the monster himself. I needed Elena to take her own mask off, and the fastest way to make a narcissist drop their mask is to introduce a little bit of paranoia. It started on a Thursday. I sat in my cheap motel room, watching the live feed from the kitchen camera. David was at work. The kids were at school. Elena was sitting at the island, wearing a silk robe, casually scrolling through her phone and drinking an expensive latte. She looked so incredibly relaxed, so secure in her stolen life. I picked up my burner phone. I typed in Elena's number and attached a single screenshot from the hidden camera footage I had taken 2 days prior. It was the exact moment she had shoved my son away and poured herself a massive glass of wine at 3:45 in the afternoon. Underneath the photo, I typed 3 simple words: Mother of the Year. I hit send. On my laptop screen, I watched the live feed. 5 seconds later, Elena's phone buzzed on the marble counter. She picked it up. She looked at the screen. The transformation was instantaneous. The color completely drained from her face. She dropped the phone on the counter like it was radioactive. She jumped up from the stool, her eyes darting wildly around the empty kitchen. She ran to the window, pulling back the blinds, staring out into the empty street. She was terrified. She knew someone had been inside the house. She immediately dialed a number. The audio picked it up perfectly. "Richard," she hissed, her voice trembling with raw panic. "Richard, someone sent me a photo from inside the house." "No, David isn't home. Someone is watching me. Is it Anna? Did she hire a private investigator?" She listened for a moment, biting her nails furiously. "Don't tell me to calm down. If David sees this, the entire plan is ruined. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I smiled. The seed was planted, but I wasn't finished. The next day, it was David's turn, but I didn't send him the video. That would be too easy. I sent an unmarked, thick manila envelope to his law firm via a private courier. Inside was a single printed piece of paper. It was the Excel spreadsheet titled David's Triggers. I didn't include any context. I just let the document speak for itself. I knew David. He was an analytical, logical lawyer. He would read the columns. He would see how every single argument we ever had was perfectly categorized. And he would see how Elena's perfect reactions were calculated, scripted responses designed entirely to manipulate him. At 6 p.m., I watched the living room camera feed. David walked through the front door. He didn't say hello. He didn't take off his coat. He walked straight into the kitchen, holding the crumpled piece of paper in his fist. He looked pale, confused, and deeply disturbed. Elena rushed up to him, pasting on her fake, loving smile. "Hi, honey. How was your—" "What is this, Elena?" David interrupted, his voice cold and hard. He slammed the paper down on the kitchen island. Elena looked down. The hidden camera caught the exact moment her soul left her body. She recognized her own spreadsheet immediately. I don't know what that is," she stammered, taking a step back. Her voice pitched up an octave. "David, someone is harassing me. Someone is trying to ruin us. It's Anna. It has to be Anna. She's obsessed with me." "Anna is living in a homeless shelter, Elena," David snapped, his patience finally breaking. "She doesn't have a computer. She doesn't have access to my office. This has your exact handwriting on the margins. You wrote down my fight about my mother's lasagna. You categorized my triggers." "She fabricated it," Elena shrieked, her perfect composure completely shattering. She was waving her hands frantically, her eyes wide and manic. "She's insane, David. You know she's insane. She's stalking us." I sat back in my motel chair, sipping a terrible cup of instant coffee, and watched the beautiful, poetic irony unfold. A month ago, Elena had convinced my husband that I was an unstable, hysterical, paranoid woman. And now, under the pressure of just 2 anonymous messages, Elena was standing in my kitchen, screaming like a lunatic, looking exactly like the crazy woman she had pretended I was. David looked at her. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked creeped out. He looked at the woman he was supposed to marry. And for the first time, he saw a stranger. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight," David said quietly, picking up the spreadsheet and walking away without looking back. Elena collapsed against the counter, sobbing hysterically into her hands. The foundation of their relationship was officially cracked, and I was about to bring out the wrecking ball. The wedding was going to be the grand finale. Elena's engagement party was supposed to be her crowning achievement. She had invited over 150 guests to my former house. David's entire wealthy family was there. Our mutual friends, the ones who had immediately blocked my number and taken her side, were there. And sitting at the VIP table near the garden patio was Richard, my former boss, drinking top-shelf scotch and acting like a mentor to the happy couple. They had set up a massive projector screen on the lawn for a romantic video montage, a slideshow of their beautiful, organic love story. They needed catering, and a catering company needs temporary servers for a party of that size. With my dyed black hair, thick glasses, and a generic black catering uniform, I walked right through my own front door carrying a tray of champagne flutes. Nobody looked at me twice. To them, I was just the help. To Elena, who brushed right past me in a stunning white cocktail dress, I was invisible. At 8:30 p.m., the sun went down, and David tapped his glass with a spoon. The crowd gathered on the lawn, taking their seats. "Thank you all for coming," David said into the microphone, his voice a little strained. He hadn't fully recovered from the paranoia of the spreadsheet, but he was trying to keep up appearances. "Elena has prepared a short video to celebrate our journey together." Elena beamed, taking the microphone. "I just wanted to show everyone how lucky I am. True love really does conquer all." She signaled the AV technician, a teenager hired for the night, to hit play on the laptop connected to the projector. What Elena didn't know was that 10 minutes earlier, while everyone was taking their seats, the invisible catering waitress had casually walked past the AV table and swapped her silver USB drive with a pink one. The screen flickered to life. For the first 10 seconds, it was exactly what Elena planned. A beautiful photo of her and David at the beach, accompanied by a soft acoustic love song. The crowd awed, and then the screen violently glitched to black. The acoustic music cut off, replaced by the harsh, static hiss of raw, unedited audio. The projector lit up with the hidden camera footage from my kitchen. High-definition video blown up to 10 feet tall. It was Elena, wearing her expensive coat, shoving my 4-year-old son away. "Don't touch my coat with your sticky hands, Leo." Her voice blasted through the massive surround sound speakers, echoing across the silent lawn. "Go to your room. I don't want to hear a single sound from either of you until your father gets home. Now!" A collective, horrified gasp ripped through the crowd of 150 people. David's mother dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the patio, but nobody even looked down. David froze, his face turning an ash-gray color. He slowly turned his head to look at Elena. Elena was paralyzed. The microphone slipped out of her hand and hit the grass with a loud squeal of feedback. "Turn it off!" she finally shrieked, lunging toward the AV table. "Turn it off right now! It's a deepfake! It's a virus!" But the teenager at the laptop was locked out. I had encrypted the presentation to autoplay and disable the keyboard. The video on the giant screen abruptly cut to the second clip. Elena, pouring a massive glass of wine at 3:45 p.m., holding her phone to her ear. "Richard, it's me, the giant Elena on screen side." At the VIP table, Richard choked on his scotch, suddenly realizing his name was echoing across the yard. "Yeah, the transfer cleared," the video continued. "No, David doesn't suspect a thing. He's so incredibly clueless, it's actually pathetic. He thinks I'm Mother of the Year." Then came the terrible, high-pitched laugh. "Are we still good for the promotion bonus? Because playing stepmom to Anna's annoying brats is exhausting. I earned that payout." The silence in the backyard was absolute, deafening horror. You could hear the crickets chirping. Every single pair of eyes slowly shifted from the screen to Elena and then to Richard, the vice president of marketing, who was currently trying to sink into his chair and disappear. David didn't yell. He didn't scream. He walked slowly over to Elena, who was shaking violently, crying real panicked tears. "David, please," she begged, reaching for his arm. "It's Anna. She's doing this. She hacked us." David looked at the screen. The video had transitioned to a massive side-by-side display. On the left, the fabricated corporate emails that got me fired. On the right, the text messages between Elena and Richard discussing exactly how to fake my IP address. "She didn't hack anything, Elena," David whispered, his voice trembling with a terrifying, contained rage. "You recorded yourself in my house. You conspired with my wife's boss." He looked at Richard, who was already standing up, trying to quietly walk toward the exit. "Richard," David called out, his voice suddenly booming across the yard. The lawyer in him had fully awakened. "If you take one more step off my property, I am calling the police for corporate fraud, wiretapping, and extortion." Richard froze. I stood in the shadows near the patio doors, holding my empty catering tray. I watched my former best friend fall to her knees on the grass, sobbing in her pristine white dress, completely exposed in front of everyone she had ever lied to. Her perfect stolen life was burning to the ground in high definition, and I was the one holding the match. The backyard was no longer an engagement party. It was a crime scene of ruined reputations. Guests were standing up, muttering in shocked, disgusted voices. Some were already power-walking toward the side gates, wanting absolutely nothing to do with the nuclear fallout. David's mother, who had praised Elena just an hour ago, was being helped into the house, hyperventilating. Richard, my former boss, tried to save himself. He puffed out his chest, trying to project the authority he used to terrify me in the boardroom. "David, listen to me," Richard stammered, his face sweating profusely. "This is a gross misunderstanding. That audio is clearly altered. We are talking about a major corporate lawsuit if you—" "Shut up, Richard," David interrupted. He didn't yell. His voice was terrifyingly calm, the voice of a senior partner at a law firm who had just smelled blood in the water. "You used company servers to frame my wife. You colluded to commit corporate fraud. I have the IP logs and the text messages on that screen. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, the board of directors at your firm will have a copy of this entire presentation. And by 9:15 a.m., the SEC will have it too. Get off my property before I have you arrested for trespassing." Richard didn't say another word. He turned pale, grabbed his expensive suit jacket, and practically sprinted across the lawn toward his car. His 30-year career was officially over. Then, David turned his attention back to Elena. She was still on her knees on the grass, the pristine white dress stained with dirt and spilled wine. The narcissistic mask was completely gone, leaving only a pathetic, terrified woman who had just realized she was out of moves. "David, please," she sobbed, reaching out to grab his pant leg. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I did it because I loved you. I wanted us to be a family." David looked down at her, and the absolute revulsion in his eyes was something I will never forget. He kicked his leg back, breaking her grip. "You don't know what a family is," he said quietly. "You screamed at my son. You used my children as props. You lied to the court. You destroyed Anna's life, and you made me a willing participant in stealing her children. You have exactly 5 minutes to pack whatever fits into your car and get out of my house. If you are still here in 6 minutes, I am calling the police." "But I have nowhere to go," Elena shrieked, the panic taking over completely. "My apartment lease is up. I spent all my savings on this party." 5 minutes, Elena," David repeated, turning his back on her and walking briskly into the house to check on the kids. But I had already taken care of the police. I had dialed 911 exactly 10 minutes before the presentation started. I reported a disturbance and a case of severe child endangerment, noting that I had high-definition video evidence. As Elena frantically ran into the house to grab her things, the flashing red and blue lights of 2 police cruisers illuminated the front driveway. I didn't stick around to watch her get put in the back of the cruiser. I didn't need to. I had done what I came to do. I took off my catering apron, left the tray of champagne on the hood of Richard's abandoned sports car, and walked quietly down the street, melting back into the shadows. The next morning, the legal earthquake hit. With the flash drive evidence submitted to the police and the family court, the restraining order against me was immediately dissolved. The judge who had initially ruled against me was absolutely furious at being manipulated. Elena was officially charged with perjury, forgery, and fraud. Richard was fired by his board of directors before lunch. To avoid a massive public PR scandal, the company offered me an incredibly generous multi-million-dollar out-of-court settlement, completely clearing my name and reinstating my professional reputation. I wasn't homeless anymore. I was wealthy, vindicated, and legally cleared. But the most important victory happened at 3 p.m. that afternoon. At exactly 3 p.m. the day after the party, my phone rang. It was the family court. Based on the mountain of digital evidence, the police reports, and Elena's immediate arrest, the emergency custody order was entirely reversed. I drove to my old house. I didn't knock. I used my key, walked inside, and my 2 beautiful children ran into my arms. I fell to my knees in the hallway, burying my face in their hair, and for the first time in over a month, I cried. Not tears of despair, but tears of absolute, overwhelming victory. It has been 14 months since that night, and the landscape of my life looks completely different. Elena is currently serving a 3-year sentence in a state facility for perjury, forgery, and identity theft. The judge made an example out of her for manipulating the family court system. She has absolutely no money, no friends, and a permanent felony record waiting for her when she gets out. Richard, my former boss, lost his marriage, his reputation, and his entire pension. He had to sell his sports car just to pay his legal fees after the SEC investigated his division. With the massive multi-million-dollar settlement I received from the company, I didn't just get back on my feet. I bought a stunning 5-bedroom house in a much better school district. I started my own marketing consulting firm, and ironically, I now poach my former company's biggest clients. But the most satisfying closure came from David. About 6 months ago, he showed up on the porch of my new house. He looked exhausted, older, and completely broken. He had a bouquet of flowers and tears in his eyes. He begged me to let him come back. He said Elena had brainwashed him, that he was manipulated, and that he finally saw the truth. He said he wanted our family back. I looked at the man I had loved for 8 years. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt nothing. David, I said quietly, standing in the doorway of a house I bought with my own resilience. A marriage is supposed to be a partnership. When the entire world called me crazy, you didn't defend me. You didn't ask questions. You just eagerly replaced me with a woman who told you exactly what you wanted to hear. You weren't brainwashed. You were just weak. I handed him the flowers back. I don't need a weak partner, I told him, and my kids don't need a father who can't tell the difference between a monster and a mother. You can have your weekend visitations, but this door is permanently closed. I shut the door in his face, locked it, and walked back to my children. People always tell you that revenge is a poison. They say you should just let it go and be the bigger person, but they are wrong. Sometimes the only way to get your life back is to burn down the lies that stole it. I didn't just take my life back, I upgraded it, and it is the sweetest thing I have ever tasted. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed watching a snake get exactly what she deserved, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments below, would you have taken David back, or did he get what he deserved? Stay safe out there and watch your back. See you in the next video.